Hi everyone, I'm Emma Leavesley and welcome to another episode of the University of ADHD. In today's episode I'm going to talk about what VAST is and how it's been seen both as an alternative name for ADHD but also as a separate diagnosis. I'm also going to talk about some of the issues around ADHD not being taken seriously, what differences a diagnosis can make and how those without a diagnosis can be left feeling lost with no help and with people dismissing their struggles. So I'm going to start off by saying that my podcasts and my services as an educator and as a therapist are not just limited to those with a formal diagnosis of ADHD. I'm here for those who identify more with VAST. I'm here for those who are waiting to get diagnosed, those who can't get diagnosed, and those who just don't want to be diagnosed. I'm absolutely not dismissing the ADHD community. I think it's really important that people with ADHD can have that identity if they wish. And I totally understand that they want to protect it, but I want to make sure that everybody is included and that everyone gets support. So we're all different and everyone is going to think about this issue differently. I'm going to try and include every viewpoint around this, but if I miss something out, I'm happy to learn about it. So if you've got any thoughts about what I'm going to talk about, which I don't cover, please get in touch and I'll use that in another episode. So ADHD is attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. I'm going to talk more tomorrow about the difference between what it says in the diagnostic criteria and what ADHD actually is. But one thing that most people agree with is that people with ADHD are perfectly capable of paying attention. If something interests you, you can pay attention, you hyperfocus. You can hyperfocus for a very long time. So some would argue that it isn't a deficit in attention. Also, the word disorder is another hot topic. ADHD impacts massively on day-to-day functioning. Having ADHD is hard. You have to work twice as hard as your neurotypical peers to do pretty much anything. Doing things like getting up on time, remembering to brush your teeth, showering, paying bills, opening letters, responding to texts and emails, cleaning your house, all of that stuff is overwhelming and can pretty much feel impossible. And then add school, work, college and uni into the mix and things get even more difficult. Your neurotypical classmate seems to breeze through the course and manage to finish everything on time. They understand everything and somehow know what it is that they're supposed to be doing. Meanwhile, you're in a sea of bits of paper. The tutor has told you what you're supposed to do, but they may as well have been talking Klingon, and you've forgotten to do that homework. A common theme that I come across with university students with ADHD is basically, I somehow passed, I never read a textbook, all of my assignments were done as last-minute all-nighters, I revised for the exams by cramming the night before. All of this and this difficulty in functioning certainly points to the definition of disorder. A disorder is something that affects your day-to-day functioning. But some people don't like having the word disorder in there. They see ADHD as a different way of thinking, a different way of being, and don't consider themselves as somebody that's got a disorder. I'm a firm believer that you can learn to live with your ADHD brain and get it working with you and you working with it instead of you both working against each other. And I'm a firm believer that you can use the ADHD brain to your advantage. But also that with this, you're still likely to have struggles that come with it. So there is a theory that if you get your environment right, ADHD stops being a problem. The problems occur due to friction between what's expected of you and how your brain works. And that's all well and good, but unfortunately we live in a world and society where everything is geared towards neurotypical people, especially in the education system and in the majority of jobs. Although this theory definitely has some truths in it, this isn't attainable for everyone. So I can completely understand the people who want to drop the word disorder, but I also fully get the people who think it needs to be there to show the severity of how ADHD impacts on daily life. ADHD has been around for a very long time, despite what some people think. There are those people who believe that it's a new trendy thing, and this is definitely not the case. Some people think that ADHD is made up and that it's making excuses, it's bad behaviour, being lazy. While those people tend to annoy me massively, and I spend a lot of time talking to them about evidence that we've got that ADHD is very real, and I talk to them a lot about functional brain scans, I do have some sympathy with some of them. Some of these people think that ADHD is just being normal, so why would they think that? Why would they think that ADHD is just normal? To me, that tells me that it's likely that they've got undiagnosed ADHD themselves. But anyway, back to my point. ADHD has been around for a very long time, and it's had a lot of names over the years. Previously, it was known as ADD, and then the H got added, and some people still refer to it as ADD. Before this, it's had some pretty horrific names. In 1902, Sir George Frederick Still called it, wait for it, an abnormal defect of moral control in children. Over the years, it's also been known as minimal brain dysfunction and hyperkinetic reaction of childhood, amongst other things. Now we understand that it's not something that you just grow out of, it's something that carries on in adulthood. And even more importantly, it's not just something that affects boys and men, girls and women have it too. And with this understanding, we now have an explosion in diagnoses of women whose struggles have gone misdiagnosed and unnoticed for years. And this is a good thing. Those women can get the help they need, and more girls will get the early help they need in childhood. There is a lot more that needs to be done, but that's for a separate podcast episode. Dr. Hallowell and Dr. Ratey are two psychiatrists from the US who proposed a new name in their book ADHD 2.0, and they adopted this name from Carrie Feeble, a health journalist. It's a very good book, ADHD 2.0. I've attended training and webinars by Dr. Hallowell and Dr. Ratey, and I've read a lot of their books. They both have ADHD and they explain everything really well. They proposed the name VAST, or Variable Attention Stimulus Trait. Some people take this as an alternative name for ADHD, and some people agree with this alternative name, but some people definitely don't agree with this, and they think that calling it a trait rather than a disorder gives fuel to those who deny the existence of ADHD, and it could limit the amount of help available. I can see how this could be insulting to some people. However, it's important to note that in their book they do not propose the name VAST as a replacement for ADHD. They recognise ADHD as what we know it is now, as a condition which is highly heritable but can also be caused by brain damage or exposure to toxins in pregnancy or after birth. ADHD is caused by biological factors, not environmental factors. Screen time, technology, parenting, all these things do not cause ADHD. VAST is the name for a condition which mimics some of the symptoms of ADHD but wouldn't get an ADHD diagnosis. The limited attention span and the hyperactivity in VAST is caused by various things, including the instant gratification that we get in the modern world and the brain training itself to only pay attention in short bursts. Growing up with TV, with ad breaks and social media has had a big influence on developing brains. You can spend hours scrolling through reels and shorts because you're only paying attention to very short videos, and that's what VAST is. VAST is created by the environment, not genetics. But people with VAST need help and support too. They struggle with some of the same things that people with ADHD struggle with. If somebody has ADHD, it's likely that they will have known there's something wrong with them for a long time. Or in a child, the parents would have noticed there's something wrong. You feel different, you can't do what other people can do, and often you see it as a character flaw. You might have been diagnosed with anxiety or depression, but the treatment that you've been given for that just hasn't worked. You might have found that you've been criticised all through your life for not living up to people's expectations, but you might also have been disappointed in yourself for not meeting your own expectations of yourself. And what tends to happen is you can self-identify as a failure. And then there's the diagnosis, so it's finally an explanation. Maybe everything makes sense now, maybe it doesn't, maybe you're relieved. You could be angry and frustrated. Why wasn't this picked up when I was in school? How different could my life have been if it was? Or if you were diagnosed when you were young, you might not have had this experience. It could have been, oh, I've been told that I've got ADHD. Does that mean that there's something wrong with me? You might not know what it is. A diagnosis, though, is a doorway to medication, to help in class, to support, in some cases understanding, in some cases, oh, here we go, another one with ADHD. Everyone's got ADHD now. I will add that ADHD is underdiagnosed in adults. One study by Ginsberg et al. From 2014 estimated that only 20% of adults with ADHD actually have a diagnosis. So think about that. Out of all the people who are adults who've actually got ADHD, only 20% of those have been diagnosed. So that's a massive number of people that haven't. And this study was from 2014, so hopefully with more women being diagnosed, this has evened out a little bit, but it's still a lot of people that haven't been diagnosed. When people are diagnosed as adults, some people then strongly identify as having ADHD. It explains why they do what they do, and this can be really helpful and empowering. Now they can strategize and get help. But some people don't find it useful and get stuck. They've got ADHD now. This is what's making them do it. This is how it's supposed to be. Some people make changes and see improvements, and that identity as having ADHD takes a bit of a backseat compared to other aspects about themselves. And there's a big ADHD community out there, particularly online, and for some people, it's like they found the tribe. They're accepted for who they are. They're understood. TikTok is a big example of this. There's a lot of people with ADHD sharing the stories. There's a lot of TikTok communities. The hashtag ADHD TikTok is a big hashtag on there. But I have spoken to a lot of young people who say that there's a lot of people trivialising ADHD and even pretending to have it. I've heard anecdotally that this does happen quite a lot. This is something that I've noticed has definitely annoyed a lot of people within the ADHD community. I have seen people trivialising ADHD, and I can believe that, but also they are claiming that there are people out there pretending to have ADHD. I am aware of the whole trivialising mental health conditions, that I'm a bit bipolar, I'm a bit OCD, the online games that tell you how OCD you are, how ADHD you are. So this is definitely trivialising it, and it's wrong. But I would argue, who is anyone to tell someone whether they've got ADHD or not? How do you know that they're pretending? I would advise people not to self-diagnose anything, because it might not be ADHD, it could be something else which you could get more appropriate help with. See your doctor. Some people with ADHD get annoyed with the pretenders and the people who self-diagnose. I can't understand this, because it's likely it's taken them a long time and a lot of fighting to get that diagnosis. They could have been on waiting lists for years. It could have cost them a lot of money. But for those people still on that waiting list, they need acceptance too. They're struggling with no solid explanation, medication or help. As I've talked about, ADHD is incredibly complex. The symptoms are different for everyone, and there's different severities and different levels of functioning. I've not even gone into the symptoms here. I've just talked about diagnosis and identity. I hope that you can manage to find the help and acceptance that you need. Wherever you're at in this journey, however you see ADHD in yourself, that's okay. There really is no right or wrong way. I hope you found this podcast episode useful, or at least a bit interesting. So next time I'm going to be talking about the diagnostic criteria of ADHD and how it differs compared to actually living with ADHD. I hope you will join me. If you have any feedbacks or comments, please get in touch. Go to rethink-adhd.co.uk for contact details and to subscribe to my mailing list so I can update you on free stuff, offers and upcoming courses and webinars. So that's rethink-adhd.co.uk. Speak to you all next time. Remember to subscribe.